I've got a predicament. I've been talking about these stupid bear games way too much. I gotta play a horror game that has things that are scarier than some rejected Sonic characters. If merchandise of it is allowed in a Hot Topic or God forbid Target, then I'm not playing it. Otherwise, they're gonna take my ankles. But thankfully, I think I found one. A game so scary, it inspired fear in the government. Manhunt, a game known for its brutality and controversy, was made by a developer who wasn't unknown for controversy among many of its games, that being Rockstar. They made Space Station Silicon Valley and a bunch of other games no one cares about. Figure we'll get this out of the way first. Manhunt's been through a lot of different controversies, first and foremost, one that has affected past players and will continue to affect future ones. This game is literally unplayable on Steam. You want to have an example of a good game modding community? Manhunt would literally be soft-locked as soon as you buy it, if not for mods. Right in the tutorial area, there's a gate that won't open. Less than 3 minutes into the game and it's over. Hope you enjoyed the $10 Manhunt demo. You have to download this fan-created patch. Not only does it make the game run in 16:9, which is very appreciated, but it also fixes the dreaded gate. Now I can have the privilege of not throwing $10 away. Anyway, the big controversy was for when the game was released. It was seen as the pinnacle of gratuitous violence, being so realistic that it even made staff members at Rockstar uneasy. While browsing around at the time for people talking about how Manhunt is poisoning your child's mind, I found an article that said how Manhunt is so user-friendly any 12-year-old could get through this game in one sitting. Firstly, the game is easy to pick up and play, points for Manhunt, and secondly, little Timmy ain't getting past this fucking gate. Also, this article was allegedly written by Mr. Bioshock, glad to know there's good internet service in Rapture. Alright, hi, so this is Hyper from Video Editing Land. When I read that article there, I didn't scroll further down than the article in question, but I noticed a second one attached to it with a very nice title called In My Private Moments, I'm a Murderer, which is a fun title for an autobiography, I imagine, where this guy, I don't know what his deal is, but he uses some very colorful language to describe him thinking about murdering a random guy on the sidewalk one day, and then he starts talking about Manhunt and shit, and yeah, it's like, even if Manhunt has filled me with a lifetime of bloody murder fantasies, I trust myself and the majority of people who played this to have the sanity to not act on them. And I'm like, that first part is a little concerning, buddy. So, that's about it. I just noticed that when, also sorry if you hear mouse clicking noises, I'm reading back through it. I just found that interesting when I had to get the screen caps to put on screen all fancy. I hope he either found help or they caught him. Back to you, Hyper, from like a month ago when this audio was recorded. Oh yeah, also the media threw around all the buzz you'd expect, like, it's teaching your child to murder, ignores the M rating. On one hand, half of the stuff I saw surrounding Manhunt's controversy is stuff that games like Mortal Kombat, Doom, and Night Trap all got shit for, which is really egregious in Night Trap's case because you're supposed to be defending people in that game. On the other hand, though, Manhunt is definitely more, let's see here, agonizing, disagreeable, grievous, vexatious, incommodious, and other fun adjectives for uncomfortable. Coupled with the fact that the PS2 was a pretty big graphical leap for the time, compared to the 3 games from before, yeah, Manhunt probably deserved the reputation most, especially when you realize Mortal Kombat had a guy who pew-pews ice at you, Doom had you murdering demons, meanwhile Manhunt has you killing guys by suffocating them with plastic bags. Definitely hits a bit closer to home. But how are we gonna figure out how bad this game truly is if we don't actually play it? Besides, most of the coverage on the game surrounds the controversy, not many people actually talk about the game itself, so I'm interested to see how this one plays out. Let's dive in. The game starts with a news report on a guy named James Earl Cash. He's been on death row for 3 years and is finally, probably rightfully, about to be put down. Turns out, though, we survived what was supposed to be our demise. We don't know how yet, but we're being ordered around by this director guy. It seems like he helped us out of our brush with death, and seeing as we don't have anything else going on, we take the earpiece and set out on our murder spree. The director uses a lot of movie vernacular, so it isn't hard to piece together you're basically making a snuff film for this guy, which, if you don't know, is a video of people getting killed, no shit. And we don't really know if he's having us do it for laughs or if he gets a sick kick out of it, but regardless, here we go. This first level is basically our tutorial stage. We get shown how to hide in shadows, you'll know you're good if the icon of cache at the bottom is blue, and how to do stealth kills. The longer you hold down the button, the colors will eventually change. It goes from white to yellow to red. You want to do this for style points. You don't realize how messed up kill in style sounds until the killing in question is as visceral and disturbing as possible, but that's Manhunt. At the end of each stage, you're awarded a rank in the form of stars. You can get 3 for style, 1 for speed, and 1 you can only get by playing on the hard mode of the game. Little theory I have, but going through the game, I thought the ranking system being represented by stars was supposed to be an analog to the star system in GTA. As we know in that game, the stars are represented by how wanted you are by the police. Seeing as you get more stars for how brutal you are in Manhunt, obviously if this were a GTA game you'd be more wanted by the police the more cruel you are. I'm either the first person to have thought of that or the 5,000th. This game has you doing a lot of stealth, sneaking in shadows until you get the prime opportunity to get that red execution on someone. Like, yeah, I'm not getting the star for speed, but it's kinda satisfying, I'm not afraid to admit. Although if you're a complete simpleton, there's nothing stopping you from running up to a guy and beating them to death completely tactlessly, which is what I did for the first 2 levels there, much to the dismay of the friend I was streaming to. Sorry, but also not. You don't really want to kill enemies the non-stealthy way, though, as you're more likely to get yourself hurt doing it. It makes a lot of noise, and it's just straight up clunky, so it's encouraged to go for stealth kills when you can. Plus, on top of that, if you get rung up on more than one guy, you are just gonna be totaled completely. You are not equipped to deal with more than one person at a time. There's multiple types of weapons you can use for an execution. You have the green ones that are one and dones but are the quietest, the blue ones which you can keep after doing an execution but are a little louder, and the red ones which are the same as the blue but make more noise on executions and do more damage with the basic smack. The color coding makes it easy to see them from far away, but I like how they're all consistent in what classifies a weapon under each color. Like, without them, I could probably figure out what weapon was each color anyway. The green items are smaller weapons, stuff like plastic bags and glass shards. Blue items are slightly larger and more deadly, like machetes and crowbars. Meanwhile, red items are home to most of the guns you'll see in the later game, with the only red melee item you'll see frequently being the good old baseball bat.
There it goes, a home run!
I also want to talk about the aesthetic here. The whole game is like you're looking through a camera at the game, which obviously gives the feel that you're watching the snuff film you're making, but it also kind of gives me the idea that the crimes you're committing have already been carried out, and you're looking through the security footage back. There's a lot of different ways you could interpret it, but no matter what, it looks cool. It gives the game a style that's uniquely Manhunt, to the point where the visual effects not being there just straight up looks wrong. Back to the actual tutorial level itself, though, it has a lot of these corridors that don't make it easy to get around, guys, especially in this area that has buildings designed like a Pac-Man maze, which means enemies can spot you from way far away. If you ask me, Level 2 does a much better job as an introductory stage. It has a lot more welcoming level design, and even when things open up more, you have easy access to multiple safe zones. We continue on like normal until the 3rd stage, where these guys have a fun time beating us up and then haul us away and drop us off at school.
Okay, you limp dick.
Okay, let's not do that. Level 4 is where we get introduced to another primary mechanic, guns. We only have the nail gun here, but we find some other types as we go through, mainly revolvers and shotguns, but there's some other types I'll get to later. Guns feel like they undermine the stealth gameplay, and there are some instances of that down the line, but for these first few levels where they're introduced, I think it was pretty well handled. The gun mainly serves as an easy way to kill a few enemies that you don't feel like dealing with the normal way, and in multiple instances you have to ration out your ammo. It makes it feel rewarding to get a gun. Now you have an easier way of taking out enemies that are either more dangerous or in more inconvenient positions. but if you still want the most stylish kills, you gotta be stealthy. Plus, it gives more purpose to the red items now, since if you find a blue gun you think is useful, now your red weapon will be your dedicated stealth killer and vice versa. Anyway, since we got hauled off by those guys and have no clue where we are, we're basically just walking around killing whoever the director makes us. This 5th level is pretty standard, but it has this crane that isn't great. First you have to get gas for the thing, which is annoying because you walk super slow while carrying it and can't use your weapons. What I opted to do was carry it to a dark spot and just kill everyone in the area so I don't have to worry about anyone. You can use the crane to pick up this fridge and drop it on enemies, but it's hard to get good positioning, and come on, I dropped the fridge directly on them and they get back up because no matter what, it's 2 drops to kill. He should have gone splat under the might of fridge. The crane also loves swaying from side to side, which makes it hard to drop the thing in the spot you want, and there's a second section you need to do with it later as well, which is even worse. First off, if you fail, you have to do the section before it, which you had to redo the section with the gas if you died in the first part, which also sucked, but the crane there was much easier. Here, not only are there a lot more areas where the enemies can stand where you can't drop the fridge on them, but the fridge is also very prone to getting stuck in areas where you can't re-grab it, and if that happens, you're basically screwed. The first crane got around this by having the area around the crane be very boxed in, but here it's more open, and oh boy, did it piss me off. After either having the fridge get stuck on me or running out of health because the fridge didn't want to cooperate, I took a different approach. I got in the crane to have the enemies come kill me and then ran out to go deal with them the normal way, which was much easier. Cause, get this, the second crane portion, including the parts I had to redo before, took me like a whopping 20 minutes. Just cause the crane is so damn finicky, man, and the worst part is, there's a lot I would have enjoyed about this level if not for that. In fact, I actually really liked the part before the second crane. You're able to lure people to the gas canisters with bottles to deal with multiple at once, and there's a good deal of dark areas to hide in so you don't get in a tight spot. It was really well set up, but after having a run through it the 5th time, as you can imagine, I started to not like it very much. Level 6 makes for a nice, fair difficulty increase, as you have to deal with either cramped spaces with a lot of shadows or wide open spaces with the shadows really separated from each other. I like how in some of these stages, like this one, you start out with literally nothing, so you need to scrounge around to find something you can make a crime with. This stage has a really nice progression. It might even be one of my favorites. Just in this first section, you gotta sneak into the building since there's no weapons outside, and once you do, you need to find someone with a machete and off them so that you can use it to cut the rope on this door. This was a mechanic introduced earlier, but some weapons are multi-purpose, usually acting as pseudo-keys to open a door, but I find this is a more fun and creative way than straight up making us collect keys. Immediately after, you see these metal locks, and now you need to find a crowbar, and speaking of which, the rag executions for the crowbar, wire, and sickle were the only ones that made me mildly uncomfortable, so good job for that, I guess. There's also another class of item I didn't mention earlier, those being the yellow items, which are only used to be thrown as distractions since you can't use them for executions, and since they aren't particularly strong, although if you want to beat someone to death with a brick like some kind of caveman, then be my guest. I only remembered to mention them now because they were pretty useful for this stage, and because the machete chops people's heads off in the execution, and then you can throw the chopped off heads as distractions. That's brilliant. One of the reasons I like this stage is because it's really where a lot of the mechanics all come together. You start to figure out how to kill your enemies easier. You have a short window when charging up an execution when they're turning around that you can still kill them, and you can hide in dark spots and throwing at them the opposite way for an easy opening. And how areas packed with a lot of enemies, it's a lot easier to get the attention of a few and then running to a faraway dark spot to split them up a bit. Sometimes you can just get really lucky or unlucky too, like when enemies somehow didn't see me when I was right next to them, or when a guy was looking for me and just so happened to touch me when searching a dark area. Yeah, thanks for that. You also have more guns thrown your way here. After you get the crowbar, you can actually backtrack and find, oh hell yeah, a hidden shotgun, the best weapon in any video game. You can also find a tranquilizer gun from this guy who is just begging to be murdered, and this thing is just too good. Hitting someone with it normally stuns them for a bit, and if you're fast enough you can get an execution off, but headshotting them instantly knocks them out on the ground, which is also a free kill. It's great. This level also features more heavily spaces where the ground you walk on makes noise. Stuff like fences on the floor and sand basically makes it impossible to sneak up on people that are on it. Now on to level 7, Strapped for Cash. The level names in this game sound like either songs on a metal album or Crash Bandicoot stages, which is funny because there's already a level in here named Road to Ruin. Wasn't I supposed to be reviewing Insane Trilogy? Anyway, this level has an interesting gimmick to it. These war dog people have kidnapped your family, and if you get spied by these guys, they'll be executed. That's what the director tells you, at least. Actually, there's one specific guy patrolling the area around the hostage, and if that guy spots you, he'll kill them. Anyone else is fair game. Almost immediately here, my completionist mindset kicked in, and I had to save all of them. I can't help it. There's a big area over here, but sneaking up on them is almost impossible because there's guys on high ground, and since I know getting spotted isn't going to kill someone, I run in, get them all to see me, and then run away and go on a sneaky murder spree. Also important to note that if you get shot by the tranquilizer gun, your screen will go all screwy, which is important for this level because you get a lot of revolvers here, which work really good on headshots, but don't even bother shooting them while tranquilized because that shit will not work. A lot of the time I opted for not even using the revolvers because the tranquilizer gun was a lot better and I needed the free slot for a stealth killer. The last hostage you gotta rescue is easily the hardest because not only is the area outside filled with guys everywhere, which I didn't even try to stealth around, I just shot them to death, and the guy patrolling the area is right behind a door, which is a problem because these doors really like swinging shut if you try to open it slowly, and they make noise if the door opens hard. He actually almost went to go kill them, but I got quick shotting before he could, thank God. Also, minor problem I had going through this game, most locations here are pretty dark, which makes for good atmosphere, but it makes it hard to see enemies sometimes. Like this dude right next to the shark door, I almost ran straight past him. You gotta get past these final guys, which, a power button for the fire exit. I know they're murderers, but the workplace safety violations here are a little unnecessary. These two guys jump at you, which people jumping at you from around corners is something that happens sometimes. I think they're supposed to be jump scares, but it didn't really get me because just a normal-ass guy and I have a rifle. You get picked up from daycare again and these guys seem really pissed off you haven't died yet. What's your problem? Now we're in a mall, and this is where the game really dives into gunplay. You'll be picking up stockpiles of revolver ammo, getting shotguns. I think the only weapon you even get that can perform an execution in this stage is a glass shard that you only even pick up because you break this glass door to easily pick up a revolver. When the game really leans into gunplay, it's a bit mixed, especially when using cover, because unless you know when to get out of cover, you're gonna get shot as soon as you come out. For what I got, you usually want to peek over when the enemies are either hiding behind their cover or reloading, otherwise you're gonna get rocked. Also, I don't like how the bullets have, like, some kind of limit on how far they can go, I guess. I try to hit a guy with the revolver from far away, but if I'm too far, it just doesn't hit, and it applies to the enemies too, which is helpful, I guess, but still, kinda weird. Other than that, not much happens in this level, so I figure, why not discuss the voice acting here? You don't hear a lot from characters that aren't the director, they mainly only show up in between level cutscenes, and generally I was pretty surprised that the voice acting was not half bad actually. Beats out a lot of games that came before it that I've played, and I actually quite enjoyed hearing the director's quips when you kill someone or are busy sucking at the game. After a while, you find a TV in this bar that lets you play a VHS tape the director left for you, where he pulled the old switcheroo and ordered these guys to kill your family anyway even after you save them, and Cash is pretty pissed off, although he does make a pretty good point actually that they didn't even bother to show up to your execution, so what was up with that? That's a bit messed up. It's pretty neat how the game tries to make you feel for Cash's family getting murdered and want to get revenge despite the fact that Cash ain't no saint, that's for sure, but everyone around him is so much more deplorable that you end up rooting for him anyway. After this, since the director is basically just screwing with you at this point, he has us escort this random-ass guy around. Yeah, this level is an escort mission, which isn't as horrible as it sounds, don't worry. You basically just park him in a shadow, clear out every enemy in the area, go get your friend back, and bring him to the gates, that way you can be buzzed through. I feel if not for the escort mission, this would be one of the more forgettable levels since not much really goes on here, and the only really memorable parts are the final few sections where you have this area where you stealth kill people and can climb up to the top if you want, and the final shootout right before the end. It's not bad, just not super special either. Graveyard Shift. This is another pretty lame one. You have more interactable buttons you gotta hit, but especially in the case of the ones you hit to activate the lifts, I feel like they blend into the environment too easily. Like, looking at this, I'd think it's just part of the scenery, not something I need to press. There are also a lot of areas where you have to fire at people on narrow walkways or small corridors, which doesn't give you a lot of room to move around, which is kind of annoying. The final area is mainly a problem in just getting into the main rooms, and shooting at people behind doors is a crapshoot, but I'll save that for the next level. This is a good time to mention, you can make things a lot easier on yourself by running back for health pickups, especially in this area since you have easy access to like 2 or 3, so I opted to clear out certain sections of enemies and then run back before tackling the next section, which made things a lot easier to deal with. I'm pretty sure by the end of the game, half of my collected footage was just me backtracking through levels for painkillers. So you get hauled away by these guys again, and end up in prison. Now, Mouth of Madness. I do not like this level. It starts out pretty nice. I like distracting this guy by turning on the electric chair for an easy kill, and this big open area where the only shadows are on the perimeter, so you have to lure them closer to the shadow area for good kills. Almost immediately it falls off though, because this tree area is so bad. First off, there are not enough shadows given the fact that being spotted is damn near a guaranteed death, which is because there are a fuck ton of enemies in this area that all have guns. This wouldn't be a problem if not for the fact that there is not any viable cover, since the only real area you can hide is behind these walls, which just leaves you open on whatever side you're not covering. I'm not even really sure how the game wants me to tackle this, since it gives you a free gun in the shadows on these trees, which makes me think they want me to just gun all of them down, but this isn't Team Fortress 2, dude. The gunplay isn't fast enough to be gunning, and even if I could, I'd be outgunned so hard I'd be shot to death before killing 2 people. I just had to wing it, and eventually I did it. Also, for some reason, you need to blow up this brick wall by picking up the gasoline and shooting it, which, okay, just kind of feels like unnecessary backtracking. You have to enter this building now, but there's like 4 people right next to the door, which makes it really annoying and weird. I sort of awkwardly cover one of my sides with the door and cleared out the people on the other side. It worked, it just feels very clunky. After that, you clear out a few more rooms, which isn't that bad, definitely a lot better than everything before it. You kill this guy, bring his body to this door, and we're done here. But the fun doesn't end there, because I got problems with the next level as well, doing time. Yeah, levels 10 through 12 are basically the nosebleeds of this game. It doesn't start out bad, you gotta get specific weapons from enemies and perform executions on them, which will allow you to progress, which I think is a pretty fun and cool way of doing the whole kill the enemies to win thing. But then we get to the first big section of the level. It's just a giant hallway with enemies that have guns, where you're either getting shot a bunch or waiting behind cover for an opening, which is basically the 2 big problems with the gunplay and cover system in this game. That's it though, the whole level is shooting guys, completely straight and flat level design. It is just really uninteresting to get through. As you go further, there's less and less cover until you got like 2 places to hide. Turning around corners to the next walkway puts you in a bad situation to be shot, and after repeating a couple times, the level ends. Thankfully though, after those slogs, level 13 picks the ball back up really well. As soon as it starts up, you have to follow this guy in a rabbit costume sent by the director, and you start to get the feeling everyone really wants you dead at this point. Cause almost immediately you're trapped in a small room with people coming at you. I like how you can choose to shoot them head on or hide for a little bit to have a slightly easier time positioning yourself. Some of the shootouts I was able to easily get past by waiting in a room and watching the clown car of bodies pile up at the door. And boy, do they send a whole lot of people at you, especially when you get to the watch room, like it got serious real fast. I also want to make a note of the stage theming and atmosphere, because it's really good in this stage. At its peak, Manhunt can tap into the unsettling feeling of desolate and abandoned buildings really well, while constantly evoking a dreary mood. After blowing through people, the director's had his fun, but now this is where he's planned the end of our little show, and it's gonna finish with the main character being killed off. Unfortunately for him though, I have a shotgun pretty much maxed out on ammo, and if I can survive Mouth of Madness, I can do anything. We obliterate the rabbit guy for his keys, and now the daycare attendants are out, which, yeah, I feel like it was pretty obvious before this, but if you didn't catch on, the director was having us be hauled around by them to do the whole murder thing, but the aggravated assault was a bit rude. We even get to the top of this watchtower, and ooh, don't mind if I do. Welcome to Mr. Manhunt's point-and-click adventure. Relax your time away and just click some heads. So after that great time, let's dive back into the pig again. This level's really short when I look back on it, but it still took like around half an hour. Alright, so we have to deal with the military guys again. They beat our ass around a bit and decide to make a game of this and let us run off. This, kids, is what we call dramatic irony, as the character thinks they've won and are just toying with us, but we know they shall be slaughtered like cattle. The opening section is probably the worst part since this whole courtyard area is filled with enemies, and there aren't many shadows. Oh yeah, and standing in the only area with some decent space means you'll be shot at by the guy at the top of this building, so the whole part ends up being really cramped, and you do this with 2 waves of enemies, with the second wave having shotguns. Like, I don't know what crack the enemies in this stage were on, but they saw me a lot easier and were pretty damn fast. Then you go through a series of corridors with enemies, which I just don't really like the gunplay sections that don't have good cover, because that kind of breaks the whole thing, and amounts to happy slaps with a shotgun hoping you win. Then in the final section, Ramirez is escaping back to the courtyard. I think this is the first time in the game you even see his name, and you gotta kill him before the timer runs out and he calls up backup. This is where I do my hyper-patented bullshit, because the way the game wants you to do it is clearing out more enemies chasing him through the building, then you have a shootout against him and the other enemies back in the courtyard. Instead, though, I chased him to the courtyard, went back in the building, and ran all the way up to the sniper perch and killed him with the rifle, since for some reason he never moves, so that's an easy win. Then all of a sudden this girl shows up. She was the one reporting on our, cancelled extended vacation, and picks us up saying that she has everything she needs to expose this Starkweather guy. Starkweather's been mentioned by random people, mainly the war dudes before this, but now she tells us that he's the director, and since we want to mess up this guy so bad, we decide to go with her. I'm just impressed Cash was able to hold a normal conversation without feeling an overwhelming desire to murder. See, he's not so bad. We have another escort mission to start this one off, and now you have the police on your ass. Despite what you might be thinking, no, it's not because, we survived being on death row, but actually because we hear a conversation between Starkweather and some guy telling him to get out there and not file an arrest report. So yeah, the police are working for Starkweather as well. These guys are a lot bigger of a problem too, because unlike the goons from before, they actually care about their teammates' survival, so if they see a dead body, now everyone's gonna be after you. Despite that, though, they just kind of all get alerted to your current positioning. It's not like them seeing a body is going to make things that much worse for you, which is why after I tried to hide the body and put it in a shadow, and then the guy still saw it somehow, I decided to forget that whole mechanic and just gun everyone down like normal. Not too long into the mission, we get to Reporter Girl's apartment, and it's currently being stormed by the cops, which could be a bit cramped, but it wasn't terrible. And after the coast is clear, Cash goes off on his own to teach Starkweather a personal lesson. Also, the final line from this cutscene kept repeating for some reason, and only stopped after I died.
You're my backup if I don't make it. Have a nice life. You're my backup if I don't make it. Have a nice life. You're my backup if I don't make it. Have a nice life.
The rest of the level after this is pretty short, but I do really like the casino area you go through. Nice to see some more color being used, which leads to it being one of the more memorable areas in the game. Wrong side of the tracks. This is another short one with just one problem area, this damn tunnel system. The enemies here start having SMGs that will just shred through your health in seconds. I was getting really mad at this part until I realized that murder is a suggestion, not a requirement, and just ran away from my problems. Another short one, Train to Kill. Get it, this stage has trains. It's really short, not that hard either. The enemies are usually pretty spread out, and the one area that has the 10 guys with SMGs that could have been horrible just lets you use a sniper rifle to take them all out, so it's not that big of a deal. A few of the levels from this part of the game are pretty short and not that interesting. I don't know if as they got further in, maybe they were strapped for cash. but thankfully we're in the home stretch now and the levels are about to get a whole lot better. We start out with Border Patrol, a standout mission from this game, going to invade Starkweather's mansion. Not only does the location make this one stand apart from the others in a really good way, but it's also notable for doing an excellent job of blending the stealth and gunplay together, which is all I really wanted out of this. Firstly, I should mention earlier in the game we saw this dude in a pig mask being chained up and fed like a feral animal, and now he's out and he instantly goes around murdering Starkweather's guys. Shouldn't be anything to concern myself over, surely. The enemies also start having assault rifles here, so you can't really afford to be caught with your pants down, or else say goodbye to your entire health bar. Didn't stop me from doing dumb stuff for the sake of being funny. Look, you can get a double headshot with one bullet if your positioning is just right, and that's too cool to not go for it. This is another one of the best levels in the game. The only parts I think was a bit iffy was the first bit when you're getting out of the garage, because you'd think this first guy would spot you if you stand here, but no, he'll run right past you. And if you get spotted here, you're gonna die, no question. The other bit is when you kill the sniper, since you're more than likely gonna make enough noise for people to hear you, and then every enemy will run at the building you're in, and if that happens, you're gonna have to fight your way out, since there's only one doorway in and out. Other than that, though, it was a great time. Second to last is key personnel. We're in Starkweather's mansion now, and I like how the final few stages switch up the locale. I don't take back the praise I gave to the environments, but I feel at times the stages could be a lot of dingy buildings and alleyways, so it's nice that when you get into the city we get a lot more location variety, and the mansion stages are some of the best. The level starts out great as you've just got this basement area to work with, since the hallways outside are flooded with enemies and now cameras get thrown into the mix. You can take these out with a shot, but obviously that makes a lot of noise, but it's better than the alternative of them knowing exactly where you are. The difficulty of these last few stages also gets increased a lot, but unlike in previous stages where I complained, it all feels fair and manageable, which makes it actually enjoyable. Coupled with the fact that now we have level design that complements the best of both the stealth and the gunplay, it makes for some very nice levels to close the game out with. The level itself doesn't have anything crazy, it's more just another test of what you've learned so far and continues off Border Patrol and just being fun. The only complaint I had is that early in the stage, the hallways can look pretty samey and it makes it a bit tough knowing where you are at times. But now we're at the final level of the game, Deliverance. It starts off with a bang immediately as the pig guy from before breaks into the elevator while Cash is inside. This is a weird reference, but for some reason this immediately reminded me of the elevator fighting Madness 2. Anyway, the name of this guy is revealed as Pigsy, and he'll be our main opponent for the day. We run around through this attic until, oh shit, okay, runaway. Yeah, you're in a maze of hallways and Pigsy's patrolling the area, so you gotta find some items to do execution with and show him what for. While Pigsy can't gun you down like the other guys can, you still gotta watch your step around him, cause one swing and that's a major blow to your health. It's almost like you're being hit by a chainsaw or something. This is a really fun section, aside from the run-in with Ramirez, which was riveting. Pigsy is the only real boss fight you have to deal with, and I think it blends in the standard mechanics quite nicely. You gotta navigate the whole place for weapons, all while outmaneuvering Pigsy, and once you find one, you gotta get him off your ass and lure him like every normal enemy. The maze is also actually designed well. It isn't huge, there's a good deal of room, so you can run through it all pretty quickly. It was a great section. On top of that, I like how cramped the rooms are, which means that at any time, Pigsy can just jump around a corner and now you've got yourself a situation. Coupled with the fact that sometimes, the AI can be pretty dumb, but on the occasion it can also be a little inconsistent, which, in my opinion, adds for a nice little spice instead of everything just being strictly predictable. So sometimes when you run into the shadows, Pigsy will still see you and now you gotta kinda improvise. It was a really fun time. After that, we have a bit of a small section. It just kind of feels like they had a beginning and they had an end to your run-in with Pigsy, but they didn't really have a middle part. So you have to lead Pigsy up these stairs and onto this grate here to make him fall, but man, it's all worth it for the payoff. Oh hell yeah, now that is a satisfying boss death. Unfortunately, when trying to break into Starkweather's room, you need to get through all these guys, which took me a while for some reason, even though I feel like it wasn't that hard. It's just a standard stealth section, I don't know what my problem was here. The one part that was legitimately annoying is these two guys by the door that I just couldn't make leave their post, and since I had no ammo in my gun, I had no clue what I was supposed to do about this. We finally confront Starkweather, and this is basically a victory lap. Also, this is the mastermind behind a snuff film ring. It looks like he should be reviewing cartoons on YouTube. You challenge him head-on, or take a more patient approach. I inadvertently took the latter option because he was running around like a chicken with his head cut off and I couldn't find a good opening. After a bit of him shooting bullets at a man who doesn't exist, because I've barely moved from this spot, we're able to absolutely explode him with a chainsaw. Like, we don't just cut his head off, we vaporize it, goddamn. The game ends on a news report featuring the reporter from earlier, showing how they exposed the snuff film ring, the police chief was in on the deal, and Cash is nowhere to be found, thus closing out Manhunt. This game, man, look, it had a lot of ups and downs for me, and it might not be my favorite game of all time or anything, but it's definitely something special. Manhunt is a game that I couldn't see being made today, mainly because I haven't seen very many games that are as gruesome and dark as this one is, especially in this generation of games. The gameplay was a bit scattered, with things I did and didn't like, and it being so scattered is partially why I wanted to tackle this stage by stage, because things fluctuate each time you're in a new location, but at its peak it made for a really good stealth game. Plus, there's a big eye for stage design, thematic cohesion, and atmosphere that makes for some very memorable locations, and even some good callbacks at points, like for example, in Kill the Rabbit, the prison you're in is actually the area where your death sentence was originally going to be carried out, which is really cool. As the game's scenarios get more dangerous, not only does the gameplay accurately reflect it, but the stages also become darker and more derelict. It makes the tension get higher the further through you get, and dare I say, it's a great example of ludonarrative synchronization. See, that's how you know I'm a YouTube reviewer, man. I use big words nobody uses in a normal conversation. Speaking of stuff getting more dark, man, the soundtrack. The songs fit their situations perfectly. Each of the tracks sound depressing in their own way, while also having this sense of underlying tension. This is a weird way to describe it, but the soundtrack sounds the way the environments look, which isn't a way I'd typically describe game soundtracks, but that just speaks to how well they convey the atmosphere of the game and the levels they're associated with. Speaking of which, they put a lot of effort into this OST, as you'd expect with every game pretty much. Each level has a different track associated with them, but what's cool is that the music dynamically changes if you're either being searched for or chased, and these themes change with each level. I think one of the songs that stands out most to me, funnily enough, is the menu theme. It perfectly hits the first-time player with everything they need to know. You are not safe, and everyone is against you. Another one that stands out to me is the track for Deliverance. Not only does it sound like it has a motif to the menu theme, but also since this needs to serve the additional function of being Pigsy's boss theme of sorts, you can hear mechanical objects which get louder the more danger you're in, alluding to his chainsaw, and the song even sounds like it samples distorted pig squeals when you're being chased. I'll be honest, when I was actually playing the game, I don't feel like I gave the soundtrack enough appreciation, which is why I was happy I went back and listened to it on YouTube for the video. If you do anything, I highly recommend checking out the songs because they just work beautifully in getting across everything the game wants you to feel all on its own. I'll save the credits themes for a bit because those are also ones I really like, so instead I'll talk about how press coverage has an uncertain sense of fear to it, complementing how the level makes you realize how you have basically nobody on your side and everyone wants you dead. Kill the Rabbit has one of my favorite themes for when you're being looked for or in danger. Since you're meant to die here, the music sounds like you're really putting your all into making sure you get out of this scrape alive. Ironically, one of my favorite songs has to be the themes for Mouth of Madness. The way it sounds, it almost feels like they knew how hellish the level was, since it probably exemplifies the anxiety of having these people hunting for you better than any of the other levels here. Speaking of the atmosphere, good god, I need a full-on gush about it here. If I could hone in on one thematic through-line Manhunt has going, that'd be the feeling of fighting a losing battle. You are in these major cities that feel like they should be populated with people but are completely desolate, and the only signs of life being people who want you dead, no questions asked. During this, you're barely able to get your bearings as you're tossed from area to area by a bunch of guys you just can't take on, which makes you feel for Cash even though he is still very much a mass murderer. As you progress through the game, all dashes of hope are just eviscerated, starting with your family being kidnapped. Even if you save them, they still die in the end, having to drag this asshole around town just because the director wants to have a laugh, culminating in having to fight your way through and around the very prison you escaped from at the start of the game. The breaking point is the climax of Kill the Rabbit, where, obviously you can't just lie down and die, but by trying to survive, you put yourself in the worst situation you have been up to this point. It's kinda weird, but having Starkweather's chatter in the background when things are going on make it feel like someone was on this messed up journey with you. You get a small pick-me-up finally being able to kill off some of the guys who have been carting you around on this little field trip, but then immediately you have the last stand of the war guys to deal with, and then you see as you get into the actual thriving cities that even those aren't safe zones for you, since you have the police coming after you too. Then right as you're getting to the end, you finally have some glimmer of hope to get you out of this situation. While the director always gave you a description of what you needed to do, there wasn't much direction for you, ironically enough. You just kinda dealt with everything that came your way. But now since you actually have someone that's on your side and can help you out of your predicament, you decide that killing Starkweather is the only way to close this out, and you end up fighting your way through some of the toughest guys you've had to deal with just to blast his head open. Manhunt's story constantly feels like you are trying to fight to survive. The whole game has you going through the worst of it, having a consistent sense of dread and being alone the whole way through, and once you get to the end, it actually feels pretty suspenseful. You made your way out of the worst situations. Are you really going to die out now? Which makes it all the more satisfying, climactic, and final when you vaporize him with a chainsaw and get some semblance of a good ending. And that's what I love about the story and atmosphere of Manhunt. You are accosted by this tense, oppressive feeling all throughout the game, which only makes it even better when you eventually climb your way out of hell and all the way to the top. This feeling is only helped by the credits theme being a 2-pack, starting with this really triumphant feeling track, and then hitting you with the second track, which is a lot more chilled out, which gives you time to celebrate your victory, and time to look back at everything you've gone through. It's funny, because saying it out loud you'd think it'd be very out of place, but it actually works really well, and has instrumentation that's just close enough to all the other tracks to feel appropriate. It makes you feel accomplished, and even makes the ending credits scroll feel almost a little heartwarming, which was the last thing I expected to feel while playing this, making these two contenders for my favorite songs in the OST. The game has range, I'll give it that. This game is overloaded with charm, and it feels like it was made with a big emphasis for detailing, which makes it sad it's been reduced to that really controversial and messed up game. It reminds me of when people discuss NES games and the main talking point is, oh yeah, this is back when games were impossible. Like, that's not all there is to it. That's such a reductive way of looking at these sort of things. Is the unsettling, gruesome, and controversial nature of the game baked into it? Absolutely, it's part of its DNA, but there's so much more going on here. It's sad to see how a lot of the reviews on this game really hone in on the uncomfortability factor, hyping it up while giving everything else the cold shoulder. I was looking at other reviews around when I was wrapping up this script, mainly because I hadn't heard a lot of people talk about this one, and it was sad that a lot of the game was sidelined in favor of saying the same things about the game over and over. Like, man, this game is so messed up. What sadist made this one? If you enjoy this game, you must be pretty fucked up. Not only does this mean the gameplay gets sidelined, it's also sad that a lot of people are unwilling to put all that aside and appreciate the game's finer elements. That's partially why I wanted to take a look at this game, because I wanted to go a little deeper than that and figure out, putting the face value observations aside, what Manhunt had to offer me, which I think was also helped by the fact that I guess I might be the fucked up one, because I wasn't really affected by a lot of the stuff in this game. I think a lot of the game is an acquired taste. It definitely won't be for everyone, but it's still something worth at least trying out. I would have said it was great for the Halloween season, but then this video took longer to get out than I anticipated, so never mind. Either way, the game's really cheap, and should only run you like 8 to 10 hours on your first playthrough. So if you're interested, wouldn't be bad to clear out on a weekend. I heard this game got a sequel, which allegedly wasn't very good, and who knows, maybe I'll take a look at it at some point. For now though, Manhunt is a game deserving of a chance. It truly is a controversial classic. Heh, that's the name of the video.